Insight is a video program aimed at interviewing and talking to pioneers and leaders in our community. Today, we have the immense pleasure of visiting the Honorable Ambassador from the United States to Mongolia, His Excellency, Mr. Klecheski.
Greetings.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So I would like to start off immediately with a very special question. This year marks the 35th anniversary of the diplomatic relations between the United States and Mongolia. As the third neighbor and close ally, the United States is seen by Mongolian people as a close partner and as an ally, not just in terms of diplomatic relations, but in economic and trade as well. Where do you see the two countries' relations heading?
Interesting. Yes, first of all, I would say, I'm very happy to be here with AmCham, which has been a great partner for the embassy and for me, really, not only in Mongolia, but in all my previous assignments. So throughout the world, AmCham is a really vital instrument. And it's important for the bilateral relationship as well as for the business community, of course. The relationship is at the moment very strong, and we've really been encouraged by that. And indeed, it's the 35th anniversary, so it's given us an opportunity to think back 35 years and look at the evolution from what began, I think, as a relatively limited relationship, as it inevitably must, but which has really expanded. It's expanded over those 35 years as Mongolia itself has evolved. And I'm very proud, actually, that the United States has evolved also in its response to Mongolia, really to be responsive. And I'm very proud of how often we shift our focus a little bit, or at least focus on new areas of cooperation when that's something of benefit to both countries. So in that sense, I'm very pleased with where we're going, and I really see the future of the relationship as very promising and bright. It's been a tough time with COVID, but on the other hand, COVID has also, I think, shown us that the relationship can be very beneficial to both sides. I think I stress the both sides here. We've been supportive, including supplying vaccines and equipment for Mongolia. Mongolia has also been very supportive of us. They gave us some PPE at a very important moment. But also, I think we're learning from one another. It's always a learning process between two countries that's really crucial.
I think viewers and people in general know the term American dream. And when I was coming up with the questions for the interview, I thought this would be a very fun way to start off the conversation. What do you think Mongolia's American dream is in this day and age?
Interesting. I mean, I too like the term American dream, partly because my own parents were not born in the United States, nor were my wife's parents. So, in fact, my wife herself wasn't born in the U.S. So, it's been a little bit of an American dream for us as well. Being ambassador to a country like that is a real big honor. But it is nice to see that the United States represents something that people are aspiring to and admiring. So I think it's in many different, sort of on many different levels. So first of all, the very fact that the United States offers tremendous opportunities. It's a very open environment. It's a very creative environment. And I think that does a lot in terms of the American dream. So people really see it as a place to go, to develop their skills, to find new areas of activity that can be profitable, not only financially, but emotionally and philosophically as well. I think that's really important. I think it's also a really good model. So even if people don't always go to the United States, seeing it as a model of democracy, of the free market, and all that goes with it, I think that also contributes to this idea of the American dream. It's very heartening whenever Mongolians travel to the United States, including to study. I think we offer tremendous opportunities. American universities, colleges really do, I think, in some ways represent this idea of the American dream, because American educational institutions really excel at developing creativity, creative thinking, independent thinking. And I think that's another trademark, I'd say, of the so-called American dream. So I really do believe in this, and I think it's nice to see it in every country I've been in, and certainly in Mongolia as well.
Getting back to more of the trade side of the two countries, the ties between the two countries has been, as you said, strengthening in recent years. And now that you mentioned that with the acceleration and with the utilization of technology
Right.
playing a huge role, how can Mongolia leverage the momentum to increase its commercial transactions between the United States and United States businesses and vice versa?
Right. First of all, it's nice to see that more and more Mongolian companies are operating in the United States, profiting in the United States, and that's nice to see. It's still not at the level we'd like it to be, but it's part of that commercial relationship that's definitely expanding. And I also know that American companies are looking at possibilities in Mongolia as well, though we can talk a little bit later about some of the hindrances to that, because there are certainly things that make it more challenging for foreign investors, including American investors, to invest here. But I think that, we've seen several sectors where Mongolian companies are doing well in the United States. One of those, interestingly enough, is Kashmir. I'm seeing more and more Mongolian Kashmir companies selling their products in the United States, or to the United States at least, through electronic means, right? I think, speaking of electronics, that the IT sector is another tremendous area of potential cooperation. We're seeing more and more Mongolian IT companies not only developing in their own right, but developing in cooperation with American counterparts or potential counterparts. And I think that's another area that's really important in terms of the development. The fact that Oyu Tolgoi and the Mongolian government reached agreement after a kind of a standoff for a while earlier this year, I think is very important. It hasn't yet translated as much as we might have hoped into a new burst of investment opportunities, but I think it was very important to break that deadlock. I think it was kind of a psychological big step for both sides, both for the for Mongolia as a whole, and for the business sector, because it showed that this particular hindrance could be overcome. So that gives us some renewed optimism, or expanded optimism, for greater economic commercial relations. And of course the U.S. Embassy, the U.S. government, commercial ties are among the most important things we do, in conjunction, of course, with AmCham. And so we will be continuing to focus on that as we do now. We've spent a lot of time on economic and commercial relations. But I have to say there are hindrances, and again, this is where AmCham and the embassy are doing a lot together, because there are structural hindrances. The investment climate statement, perhaps we'll talk about that later, highlights some of those. But that's another area of focus, because we want Mongolia's investment climate to be such that foreign investors, and in our case, of course, most importantly, American investors, do find interesting opportunities here.
Coincidentally, you mentioned the investment climate report. I was just about to ask. The State Department of the United States publishes the annual report. How do you see this year's outlook to Australia and Mongolia in terms of attractiveness, in terms of raising investment and being competitive on the global market?
Mm-hmm. First of all, it's worth noting the investment climate statement is something that every U.S. embassy throughout the world does. In all countries, big and small, with friendly investment climates and not, because it's a tool for us to be able to present both the opportunities and the challenges to American business. Of course, it's accessible to anyone. Mm-hmm. In fact, we very much hope that the Mongolian business community and others will read it, and we're actually trying to, highlight it even more, so that it really points to the areas where we can cooperate more, and the areas where we think legislative and other changes will help. But the investment climate, first of all, focuses on some very major opportunities in Mongolia. The opportunities continue. Some of them are evolving. I think in the IT sector, again, as I mentioned, that's one of those areas where I think there's a growing area of opportunity. But in natural resources, of course, and many others, there's opportunities. I think tourism might be one as well. Mm-hmm. But of course, the investment climate statement also highlights some of the challenges. The independence of the judiciary here is one of those challenges. I think it's a typical one, and one where we're working hard to address those problems. We have been sending, and continue to do so, particularly now that COVID is a little bit behind us, judges and other people in that sector to the United States to show them how we, I think we're a very strong model, how we in the United States ensure and reinforce judicial independence. So that's one important area. Excessive bureaucracy, requirements that make it difficult to open businesses in Mongolia are another of the many areas of focus of the investment climate statement. I think it's a really good analysis and description of both the opportunities and the challenges. So I do really hope that the viewership here will read the ICS.
So we'll be talking more about investment. You've been in the country for around 3 years. Do you recall your first day in Mongolia? What sort of memory does it bring back?
Yes, I remember my first day. In fact, I remember my first week because, of course, every time you come to a new country, particularly on an assignment, it's really an exciting thing. But I remember driving in from the airport and being really struck by some of the dynamism I saw. I don't think I knew quite as much about Mongolia as perhaps I should have at the time, but it's been a fast and very exciting learning process. But sure, it was really exciting to arrive here, and right after we got here, we walked over to Sukhpatar Square to see that. But even along the way, we saw things that were, really showed a nice dynamism that is no longer, of course, surprising to us after a little over 3 years here, but it was really great. But, first day aside, I think one of the most exciting things for a new ambassador in Mongolia is the ceremony when that person is formally, let's say, accredited as the ambassador, because it's a beautiful ceremony on Sukhpatar Square with the honor guard posed in a beautiful way, and one walks past the honor guard and then proceeds up to meet the president. I have to say Mongolia does it in a spectacular way, and it makes a great impression on us, and it's noticed, even in Washington, people notice what a wonderful ceremony that is, and how it represents Mongolia's taking the process of diplomacy seriously. So it's not the first day, but it was very quickly after the first day that we had that ceremony, and it's something that we'll never forget, I must say.
Thank you for that. How do you see the country changing during your tenure here? How did the country change?
Yeah, we experienced in these 3+ years elections, which were. We consider them very solid elections. There was a high turnout, and the process seemed very smooth. The embassy, as it does throughout the world where it can, observed the elections in each case, and we got, very positive reports on how it all played out. It's not perfect. It's not perfect in any country, but that was one thing that was important about this 3-year period. But aside from that, I think, of course, COVID got in the way of everything. It got in the way, but it also created some opportunities, as I said earlier, for what was really important cooperation. And that cooperation, by the way, continues. Just the other day, we had another area of cooperation, donation by USAID to Mongolia's fight with COVID. In fact, when I mention AID, I would have to say that when I first got here, USAID had downscaled significantly, and in these 3 years, USAID has done a tremendous amount in terms of re-expanding, I guess you'd say, its areas of cooperation. So it's doing a lot, and it's looking to do more, and we're very, very excited about that. So the business sector, in some ways, expanded. Of course, like everything else, it was affected by COVID. We're very proud in these years that the U.S. was able to contribute things like small and medium enterprises. We have a very effective, I would say, program under USAID leadership called the BEST program to support small and medium enterprises, throughout Mongolia. And it's been very encouraging to see. It began actually before we even thought COVID would happen. And it was nice that as soon as the pandemic hit, BEST, like many U.S. programs, was able to adjust to respond more effectively to the new challenges, because they were very much new challenges. in my first half year, I guess it was here, U.S. and Mongolia signed a strategic partnership. That was obviously very significant, but the strategic partnerships can be significant because they're important documents, because they involve nice ceremonies, but it's very important that those translate into expansion of cooperation. And one of the things that I've really seen and been encouraged by is the fact that the cooperation really has expanded. More than ever, we are working with Mongolia now in a new sector, relatively new sector, and that is law enforcement, which, in the old days, I think was a relatively narrow area of cooperation. Now that's been expanding. It's nice to see, FBI and drug enforcement agents from the United States come here and work with Mongolia's National Police Agency, just to exchange experiences, because challenges are evolving in this country as well. So that's one area of cooperation. In the world of educational exchanges, we've had some nice cooperation. There are now more American universities. This was really a contribution, I would say, as much of the Mongolian embassy in Washington and the Mongolian mission throughout the United States as it was of us, but I would say there's more cooperation between American and Mongolian universities. There are more American universities that are offering reduced tuition for Mongolians. I think that was another really important area of cooperation. My first year here, we had the U.S.-Mongolia, Mongolia-U.S., a year of youth, and that was another area that was really cool. Maybe one of the most memorable of areas of cooperation there was in terms of modern dance, and that was really neat, and I think it's translated into an expansion of cultural cooperation, which we always think is really important. And then we've been supporting Mongolia's peacekeeping efforts. This is something long-standing, but it's something that's been expanding over these years as well. So that's another area that I would highlight. There's a lot, in other words, and I can't list them all, obviously, but the cooperation between our countries really has gone a long way in these difficult 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And may I add that this year's American Day is coming back after a long hiatus, has had many attractive events, activities to the public and to interested people. And I just want to say this: seeing the American Days coming back, it was very nice. Seeing the jazz bands and everything.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, 35th anniversary is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think we have been celebrating it in a very nice way, and we'll continue to celebrate it till the end of the year. It's important for us, for both sides, for both countries.
For us as well,
yeah.
yes.
Exactly, yeah.
So, coming back to our earlier conversation about Mongolia and its, I should say, attractiveness and competitiveness to leverage more investment. What advantage does the private sector have compared to other countries you've been to? What do you see as Mongolia's edge would be in this scenario?
One of the things that's really struck me, as I mentioned already, I think a couple of times, is the IT sector. And it's not the IT sector per se, I think, that I want to talk about. It's more the fact that this is a youthful country and that young people are well educated here. Some of that education takes place in Mongolia, which has some excellent universities, particularly in these cutting-edge sectors, but also because a lot of Mongolians are traveling abroad sometimes after having a good, base ground, for education here, and learning more, and then in many cases returning to Mongolia to expand their areas of business or research or whatever. So I think that's a real advantage. Of course, this is a country that's rich in opportunities in other areas as well. One of the things we focus on, because it's an important priority for our administration, but also because it's an important priority at a time of climate change, is precisely green energy. And I think the opportunities here are enormous. And we are working, in fact, we have a USAID project on energy cooperation. So we're very much hoping that the conditions to encourage more investment in green energy will improve. And they are, in fact, I think, improving. We're seeing more and more green energy facilities, expanding. But I think the opportunities there are huge, and we very much hope that continues. And that's one of our priorities as well.
My follow-up question to that would be, does energy independence meaning translates to a country's independence in this modern age?
I think it's not just energy independence, but independence or sovereignty, let's say, in many sectors. I think recent developments, I think it's pretty clear what I'm talking about. Recent developments highlight the importance and the need to expand Mongolia's economic as well as political independence and sovereignty. So yes, absolutely. The more you have energy independence, the more you have food independence, etc., the more it strengthens your position in a very difficult part of the world, let's say, and a part of the world where the challenges are becoming much more visible now after what's happened with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So I do think it's very, very important, and like I said, I know it's a priority for your government, and it's a priority that we not only are adopting, but also supporting very actively.
Your Excellency, you've been in the country since 2019, and you have done a tremendous amount of work to promote the ties between the two countries. And for that, on behalf of the Mongolian people, we would like to say thank you. Among the achievements you have accomplished here, what do you think stands out the most?
I think it's been a lot of things, and first of all, thank you. It's not my achievement. I think our embassy has really, as a whole, has been a really very dynamic place throughout these years. I feel very lucky that our embassy is staffed by so many excellent people, both American and Mongolian. So, you know, I do really very much feel that that's the case, and I always try to highlight it. But our accomplishments, there have been quite a few, but I think most importantly, it's just been the expansion of the cooperation and the awareness of how important third neighbors, of which we are an important one, obviously a very important one, are, you know, the awareness of that is growing in this country. So I think that that's, in the final analysis, one of the most important general achievements, you might say, that we can have. But, you know, in various areas we've done a lot. I'm very proud, for instance, of the fact that Mongolia was on the gray list of the Financial Action Task Force. And of course, you were able to meet the requirements of this FATF institution on your own, but we contributed very significantly to that, and I'm proud of that. That's one of the many challenges where the U.S., I think the word stepped up is the right word. You know, you face challenges. We're in constant touch, not only with your government, but with the civil society sector and so forth. But when there are sort of challenges that we are aware of, and when there's a kind of an interest in our support, I'm very proud that we're quite quick about responding and very effective about responding. That was just one example, but one that really sticks out in my mind.
Putting aside work a little bit, I hear that you're a very avid art collector, sir. Can you give us a little bit more information on what your collection is, and have you found anything unique in Mongolia for your collection and for your enthusiasm, if I may say so?
Oh, we love art, but I'll just start by saying that it's not just visual art, obviously. But if just looking around this room, which perhaps your viewers will be able to do later, yes, we very much love visual art. But I have to say this country is really rich in culture. And it's both sort of the traditional culture that predates the 20th century, and the culture of the 20th century, and then contemporary culture as well, in general, you know. So in the music world, you now have some real achievements. You have your own sort of more traditional musical achievements, but The Who is something that everybody's very much aware of in the United States. It's becoming a real selling point, I would say, for Mongolia. What I like about that example, and what I'm seeing more and more of here, is the combination, the linking up of traditional culture with contemporary music. We were at my wife and I, and our son, were at the Playtime Festival, and there were some really wonderful contemporary musicians that really bring together those wonderful traditions. Traditions are one of the, well, how shall I say it? One of the coolest parts about Mongolia, right? But with very contemporary styles of music. So that's one thing that we really love here. But yes, we love our Mongolian art. We go to a lot of art galleries and museums, needless to say, as well. And it's pretty fantastic to see. Of course, our art collection also has a lot of American art, because we're very proud to present American art in Mongolia. And we have our own sort of personal collection, some of which is brought from Philippines, where my wife is from, and some of which really comes from our previous assignments. One of the nice things about being a diplomat really is that everywhere you go, you have the opportunity to engage with the art world, if that's what you like. We do love it. So every post we've been at, every assignment we've been at, we always take back at least some visual art that we think is particularly kind of evocative of that country. And that's, of course, the case in Mongolia as well. But we have that from our previous assignments in Russia and Kazakhstan, and of course in the Philippines, in Switzerland, everywhere, in Poland. So that's another thing we really like. And that's another reason we also like the art, because it really does evoke, every time we look at it, the country that we were in and all the memories that brings with it.
Transitions beautifully into the next question. In your
Good.
career-long travel as the face of a great nation, what do you think is the single most important thing for a political ambassador, a diplomat, or as I would like to put it, a representative of businesses? What would be the single most crucial mindset people that should be aware of?
I think, of course, ambassadors must be, should be, and are very proud of their country. And I have to say I'm very proud of the United States. You know, for all the reasons I listed earlier, it's really a symbol of freedom, and a symbol of not just freedom, but also what comes with that, which is creativity, independence, the ability to challenge your government, to question your government when that's appropriate, with the goal of improving things. And I think that's one of the most important things about a democracy, and one of the things that really strikes me about Mongolian democracy as well, is that, you know, the term democracy itself is just a rhetorical, in some ways, you know, a rhetorical term, but it really represents this ability to elect your representatives, but also to express yourself in many ways about what you think is wrong, but also, of course, about what you think is right. So that's one of the things that makes me very proud of being a diplomat. But I think diplomats also have to come at their assignments always looking, if possible, for win-win situations, something that helps not only their own country, but the host country as well. That's how you're most, I think, effective. And I think that's one of the things we've done very nicely in Mongolia. So it's a great career. I really love it. And I love it because we get to see many, many countries, many, many cultures. But I also really love it because I feel like I'm contributing in some ways to relationships that really, really matter, both to the country and to its people, and to the host country and its people as well. It's great.
Yes, I agree. And so you mentioned the American Chamber of Commerce in Mongolia contributing to the economic and the business environment. What's your viewpoint on the doorknock missions that American Chamber of Commerce organizes annually?
Right. I should repeat what I said earlier at the beginning, which is AmCham is always a great partner for the American embassy wherever we are, and that very much is true here. So the doorknocks are an important instrument for conveying what the business community thinks are the ways to improve the investment climate, to raise new opportunities. And that's been true in the past, and it's certainly true this year. I have to say I was impressed because this year, because of the challenges of the time that we're in, AmCham was very flexible about shifting, its focus from traveling to the United States to doing its work here for a doorknock. I've never actually seen a doorknock done in a host country before. It might be done by in other countries, but that was really an impressive step to take because I think it showed important flexibility. I have to say, one of the other things that really impresses me here is whenever I see examples of parliament, for instance, Mongolia's parliament, inviting AmCham to be in a dialogue with the parliament members, with the government, etc. I think that dialogue is vitally important. Of course, it's ongoing informally. Whenever there's an effective AmCham, this is very, very much an effective AmCham. But when you have sort of structured meetings between AmCham and whatever government institution, be it parliament or some ministry, I think that's tremendously important. It's important because it allows for a sharing of thoughts, it can generate ideas. But I think it's tremendously important also because it shows that the government really is interested and concerned with what the business community thinks. You need that kind of attitude, and you need to show it if you want to improve your investment climate. And that's been something that's really been neat in Mongolia. I'm also very impressed. In every country, AmCham has a very vigorous committee structure, and I'm very impressed with some of the committees that I've been working with, my colleagues at the embassy have been working with. Because there are so many areas in which a Chamber of Commerce, including the American Chamber of Commerce, can be working, be it corporate social responsibility, be it sectoral work. But this committee structure, which I saw expand in my 3 years here in Mongolia, is a really important engine for doing that. So this has been a really excellent American Chamber of Commerce here in Mongolia under very excellent leadership. And it'll be one of my fondest memories here, in fact, is what a great AmCham we have and how much it's really contributed to goals that we both share.
I would like to revisit a question back when we're talking about the investment climate report.
Sure.
Statement,
yeah.
Further elaborating on that, what do you think hinders Mongolia mostly in terms of attracting FDI now that the foreign direct investment law is being revised and it's being amended? Where should we watch our step on this? Yeah,
I think that there's a tremendous, it's a very complex scene, right, obviously. But I think that the ICS, the Investment Climate Statement, summarizes it very well. So I think in the area of judicial independence, excessive political interference, let's say, in the judiciary, that's one of those areas that's very important. That's a hindrance that we hear about from potential American investors. And I think that's very, very important. I think too much of a focus on state-owned enterprises is always something to be concerned about, because obviously it is a trade-off between SOEs and the free market system, shall we say. And that, SOEs also create challenges in terms of the interaction between government and the private sector. So that's another very important area. And then I think excessive bureaucracy. It's a challenge in every country, but in every country, including my own, the business community has to be working on finding the right balances, or at least encouraging the right balance between government regulation, which is of course vitally important everywhere, but also the freedom to open new businesses readily, easily, and the freedom for those businesses to operate and find new areas of work. So those are 3 areas that I think are really important. I think they're all highlighted nicely in the ICS. And we are continuing to work on that, and I very much hope that future ICSs will talk less about the challenges and more about the accomplishments. But of course, that's what an ICS is supposed to do. It's supposed to highlight where we should be focusing as embassies, as chambers of commerce, as the business community writ large. As much as I would like to carry on talking more about everything and anything in between, we do not have the pleasure of that. At this point, I would like to say thank you for having us over. And as with any great interviews, we too would like to close out with a message from you to the people of Mongolia.
And if there's anything you haven't said or anything I haven't asked, please, the microphone is yours.
Thank you. It's not just me, it's also my wife and even our kids, who have, all three of them have been here at least 3 times in each case, you know? And I have to say, we really have come to love this country and admire this country. And so I want to wish Mongolia a great deal of success in the future. It's a challenging time right now for the entire world. It's a challenging time for Mongolia too. But we not only wish you success, but we also want to stress that that success comes from cooperating with other countries, with the international community, and with preserving and focusing on that independence that means so much. One of the things that really strikes me, as I say, about Mongolia is that the idea of sovereignty and of independence is something that's very deeply rooted in Mongolia. And I wish you a great deal of success in continuing that, in continuing to raise consciousness about that. And we'll be looking back as we depart from Mongolia, which will be sooner or later, right? But we'll be looking back and you know, always thinking what a wonderful time we've had here. And I'm sure we'll continue our ties here. So with some of your viewers, at least, I think the contacts will certainly continue. But it's an amazing country. We feel really lucky to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us over.
Thanks.
And it's been
Pleasure.
a pleasure, sir.
Thank you.